Did anybody have a chance to catch any of the Invictus games this past week? Has anybody had... It's been just so inspiring to think... I barely knew anything about Invictus until it really came to Toronto, even though it had been in Orlando last year and it's off to Sydney next year, to discover that something as tragic as war, I think about 17 countries coming together, and these heroes who have served their country faithfully and have come home either amputees, no legs, no arms, never to be the same again, emotionally, post-traumatic syndrome. I heard on the CBC this morning that many of the athletes have been saying that if Invictus had not been created, thanks to someone like Prince Harry, who happened to be in Afghanistan himself and understood the realities of war, that athletes said that they certainly were considering suicide, that they could not imagine what would their life be if they didn't have some kind of purpose. It shows the power of, when there's division in this world, that there is something of a power that comes together when we unify and support one another. And it has a great message for Christians, has a great message for the church, for all religions. It's interesting, Galen and I have been following this book by Martin Thielen. He's pastor of Cookeville United Methodist Church in Cookeville, Tennessee. Pastor Martin, has written a book called The Answer to Bad Religion is Not No Religion. And in the chapter that I found fascinating this week, he speaks about the one another faith that Jesus promotes. In other words, Christianity is not a me, myself, and I individualistic faith. I've often told you of a loved one, I like her very dearly, but every time we ever talk about her church, which is United, she starts complaining about the passing of the peace. And I love her, but she says to me, I know everybody in my pew. I don't need to shake a hand. I've already done it when I've come in the morning. I've done my nod. And you know all the bugs that are out there. Well, Martin addresses this in his book. He says, I have some of my congregation that complains every Sunday when we pass the peace. And I think if you've been at Trinity long enough, you know that we don't do it every Sunday. I've been in United Churches that we do it every Sunday. But he notes this, that when we come into worship, friends, whether we like this or not, we're giving up a little bit of privacy. You may want to stay in your little private pew and think that I'm just here to be with God and, like the rest of you, but, I'm really here for myself. He's saying that's incorrect. We give up a little bit of privacy. We are one another together here. There's a spirit that unites us all, and that is God. It's interesting with all the sadness south of the border with football and this whole stand, don't stand. It's very interesting, though, that here we now have players that linking arm in arm, and now they're encouraging, I think it was at the Green Bay game in Green Bay, that fans start doing this as well, that there's a message in this world about trying to be unified, even when we have differences of opinion. And that's the thing that we really have to remember about the church. I've heard so many people in my life and ministry saying, well, those church people are a bunch of hypocrites. Well, yeah, we all are at some level, aren't we? We say one thing, we do another. There's no perfect church. Jesus doesn't over-romanticize. He knows that divisions are going to be a part of it. In fact, that's why he says, don't let the sun go down. When you have anger with somebody, go and speak to them. You're not expected to necessarily even like everybody in the church. You're like some people more than others. Just come to my own family. They don't all like me, but we all have preferences. But that's very different than encouraging one another and loving one another. My deepest prayer after coming back from sabbatical, when I just think here locally in Guelph, and this is across our country, across the world. We got all these different churches that are United Church. We've got even different denominations, of course. And I actually enjoy Presbyterians. I like Anglicans, and I even like a few Catholics out there. I mean, I'm joking with you, but I do enjoy people of all walks of faith. And it's very sad that we may not always agree, but may God help us encourage one another, that we would actually pray for one another and pray, as my favorite priest, Father Earl, would say, pray that we might agree on the same baptism, the same Jesus. We might even agree on, we might do communion a little differently, but we're one in faith. We need to encourage one another. My prayer, and I look at, all our United Churches, for example. One thing we all have in common, we have very few young people. We have very few people even under 50 in our churches. And there's no reason why United Church people right here in Guelph need not come together and get to know each other who are younger and not be in different separate little silos. Number two, there's no reason why we can't have more children's programs. Like we have great programs here in the summer, Barbara, Andrea, and others that are doing great things with VBS. We just have to work closer together and encourage one another. That's why I was so inspired in a Calgary United Church that had a couple hundred kids in the Sunday school. They're finding ways to work together with the neighborhood and community. And that's what we have to do. We have to realize being one another is with other churches and with our neighborhood as well. So I want to, just to remind you, when you say the Lord's Prayer, as Martin Thielen says, the pastor, the Lord's Prayer doesn't begin, my Father, it's our Father. It's not my trespasses, it's our trespasses. It's our daily bread. We're all in this together. And I think that's a call to respect each other, even in our differences. I want you to think for a minute about how you ever entered the church for the first time. Maybe your mom, maybe your dad brought you. I laughed. My dad would always joke and say his parents kind of pushed him out the door and said, go to church, and they went off somewhere else. And he took a long time finding his way into the church. My father didn't find his way into really coming to church in any regular way till, sadly, he had an aneurysm, and that kind of woke him up to, he never really came to church, but after his sickness, he started to realize the people, when my dad was sick, who didn't know him, they knew my mom, but they knew of my dad, but I think it touched my father's heart that they prayed for him. He felt like he was part of something that, as he recovered in Toronto for about 3 months, they prayed for him. And so kind of seeing my life as a young boy, a father that would never come to church because he was just dropped off. It was, you drop your kid off and that's what he was taught. And to finally find his way. So think about how have you found your way into the church. I hope you have a beautiful story in your own soul of how someone might have welcomed you and didn't judge you, accepted you just who you happen to be. That's a beautiful gift. I'm going to close with a story that Lyle Schuyler tells about a woman named Jennifer. And she, like so many people in this world, battling addictions, and they're everywhere in this world, and we need not judge them. They might be battling, whether it's heroin or drug addiction or alcohol, whatever that addiction might be. They're human beings that really need our support and encouragement. They're part of us. And at a time in her life, she really thought she wasn't going to carry on anymore. She just happened to be out in the community, and she met someone from a church who said, Jennifer, I hope someday you might come to our church. I think you'd really feel that you'd be welcome there. And she tells this wonderful story because Lyle Schuyler is a great church growth expert, and he wanted to know how do churches grow? And he said they grow because of someone asking someone like Jennifer who didn't know if she was going to get through another day. So she started coming to that church. And she said for the first time in her life, she hadn't had a great upbringing, a great family experience. She met some people that really cared for her, and she felt loved. And that transformed her life forever. And that helped her with her addiction. And every church I've been in, I've usually come across AA groups. In Milton, it was the Narcotics Anonymous group. It was profound. 50-some people would sometimes gather outside my office, and they were usually younger than me, but not always. But some of those folks would come up to me and say, we're so grateful that a church allows us, with our battles to come in your doors, and we need support and help. And that's what our ministry is about. And we need to do that more with one another in our churches here in Guelph.